on Instagram, on TikTok, Facebook. I'm there, man. The Mr. 13 million tag is because I had an interview that generated over 13 million views. So please go ahead and check that out if you are into certain things. I cover a whole myriad of sports as well as my love for the Dallas Cowboys. So definitely go check that out. And
Well, who was the interview with? I got to ask. I'm sorry.
well, it was with this social media influencer. She is a non-clinical psychologist, and she discusses a lot of things that are
All right.
very interesting stuff. So it went crazy. All I'm saying is that it went
I got to
crazy.
check it out, man.
Yeah,
It had to 13 million. That's
Absolutely.
awesome.
Yep.
it went
Sounds
crazy.
sounds like a good watch. 13
Absolutely.
million people can't be wrong.
Right.
We were supposed to have other hosts and other shows joining. The guys from Cowboys Can Fan couldn't make it, held up at work. And then also the host, Cam Mass of Starstruck. Cam had COVID, so she couldn't make it. And then Mass is dealing with a little family issue. So nothing to worry about. But that's the reason why they're not here, and they are posting the thumbnail. So send your prayers out to those two to get better.
Absolutely.
And first thing I want to say is Micah was held up at the airport today by some people wanting some autographs. Mike, I have you in the building right now, man. I got your shirt on. Bro, I need the autograph. I don't know if I have to hold you up to get it, but we need to make it happen. I saw your post under the Micah thing.
And that was a true story. Not that I minded doing it. I was actually flattered, and I tried to tell him, "Don't let me sign your jersey. I don't want to, I don't want to ruin your jersey." But he was adamant about it, so I did it. But it was at the tailgate that you were at.
Oh yeah, that's cool. Yeah. Nah, I just my wife actually found this because remember you gave me this at the game.
Yeah.
And we just must have thrown it in the back of the car, and it was just sitting back there. And she's like, "I'm sorry, Mike." And she's like, "Hey, I found this shirt," and I was like, "Oh man, I forgot that I ever got that," because obviously just a long day throughout that whole entire process. So, and then I had to drive home that night too. So it was funny whenever she found this. So I figured I'd bust it out. Anyways, awesome. Jumping right in here to the questions. We've got a new DC here in Dallas. A familiar face though, Mike Zimmer, coached here previously under the Bill Parcells era. Am I correct on that? And before that, okay, so and so
what, 94 to 06?
Yeah, it was a Super Bowl win.
There you go. So my first question about Mike Zimmer was, did you guys basically did they make the right decision going with Mike Zimmer over Rex Ryan? Or should they have went with a different candidate? What's your guys' thoughts on that? And we'll start with Mike.
I mean, I was okay with either one, but the more I listened to Zimmer, the more I started reflecting and remembering Zimmer and going back to it. He, to me, is going to bring what the Cowboys need. I think Rex Ryan probably would have been a little Hollywood. Love the spotlight, love the press conferences. I don't know how him and McCarthy would have interacted much. Those are, how they're going to be, how Rex Ryan is. I think Zimmer is just no nonsense. He knows the Cowboys. He knows everything that goes with it. And he's going to bring accountability. He brings a style to this team that I think they need like a kick in the ass a little bit. So the more I thought about it, the happier I was with the hire.
Yeah. Absolutely, and he's a continuation of that 4-3 defense. He's really a specialist when it comes to the secondary, which we have some really good players in the secondary. If they go ahead and re-sign Gilmore, you got Bland, Diggs coming off the injury, of course, but you know what he's capable of. You got Dono Wilson, Hooker as well, some young guys like Wanye Thomas back there. I think that he can get these guys in gear and have a really, really nice secondary. Moving on to Barry Grant, man, what was your thoughts on the hire, and do you think it was the right decision over some of the other candidates?
Yeah, I put a video out about this a little earlier that I like Mike Zimmer. I think he's a great hire. I think there's familiarity there. Jerry loves him, right? Cowboys Nation loves him. There's history there. But I wanted Rex. And I wanted Rex for the reason that Mike Tag was talking about, is that, yes, he is Hollywood, but so are we, right? And this is a guy that can be able to handle that stage, right? We've seen what he's done with the New York Jets. We're talking about the biggest stage. Hey, first 2 seasons, top 3 defense, back-to-back AFC title games. Yes, the defense didn't really play well against the Steelers in that game, but they did get there, right? So this is a guy that sends exotic blitz packages at you. We need to be doing that more often with this defense. We need somebody that's going to punch them in the mouth, that's going to be honest with them, and tell them that they're not as great as they think they are, and kind of humble them so we can get back to normal stuff. But Mike Zimmer has the ability as well. So I was fine with Zimmer, but I really wanted a little bit more kick with Rex.
Yeah. No, I mean, Rex's comments whenever was it Rappaport or was it I don't think it was Adam Schefter.
Yeah, it was Schefter.
Adam Schefter in the Super Bowl coverage, kicked it over to Rex Ryan. He's like, I'm not so sure, he has that job. And his comments was, I called up Mike McCarthy because they have all the talent there to make it to the Super Bowl, to make it to this field right here. They just gotta have better coaching. They have to do some things a little bit better. And he talked with so much passion, so much fire. I was on board with Rex Ryan, man. I was like, it's kind of like what Adam Schefter said about Jerry wanting to run through a wall for this guy. I mean, I kind of felt the same way. I was like, man, that's somebody that would get me hyped up as a player, knowing like, hey, I believe in you guys. I just have to see it on the field, and we do a little bit different things, and I think you can get there. And that's the number one thing I was taught growing up with coaches and then coaching other teams, middle school teams and whatnot, is just give that belief to your players that they can do it, enable them to do it, and then scheme around what somebody does really well and make that their entire game. Obviously, they can do some other stuff, but don't ask somebody like a Jaron Curse to play primary linebacker or to carry, a quick slot receiver across the field. Like, that's not what he does best. That's not what made him special. I just think that it's one of those things that I really liked about Rex Ryan, hearing those comments. Kelly, what was your thoughts on this whole conversation, man?
Well, first of all, I thought the Cowboys kind of botched the deal from the get-go, just because I think that the decision on Quinn should have been made a lot sooner. I mean, I get it that they were letting him do his interviews. I thought they should have given the boot as soon as Green Bay game was over, honestly. I mean, look, you knew that as an organization, you could not run this thing back as currently constructed. There's just no way. Not with the failures that we saw from this defense, which I like Quinn, but I felt like this year, his defense regressed. Over teams that they played over a 500 record, they gave up almost 30 points a game. Like, that's not a good, sound defense. And, whether that's because some of the personnel things or whether that's because things he was doing differently, playing the zone that he played in the Green Bay game, that was inexcusable. I mean, that's a fireable offense in and of itself.
Facts.
Because that defense looked lost on the field and unprepared. So I think that was our first mistake. But I thought between the two of them, I think both of them bring good things to the table equally. I think, you've got Zimmer and Ryan have both been a part of championship organizations. They both, Rex Ryan, a part of that 2000 Ravens defense, was one of the greatest defenses that I've ever seen. I mean, that defense was insane. But then you've got Zimmer back. He coached. He was a part of, the Super Bowl winning team for the Cowboys. That was the number one defense in the league at the time. And he was coaching DBs. He was a part of that staff. So, I mean, I think they both bring something good to the table. I think their philosophies are a little bit different in kind of how they coach their defenses. But I think ultimately overall, I liked both. I like the Zimmer hire. I'm definitely not, negative on it. But I definitely like it better than Ron Rivera. I heard Ron Rivera. I was out on him from the start. I thought out of the two, I thought either Rex or Zimmer. And I'm not against it. I think that Zimmer can bring some freshness to this defense. It needs new life, rejuvenate into it. I think Zimmer is obviously going to go out, and one of the first things he's going to do is address the linebacker position. It's something I'm excited about watching and seeing how we do that, whether it be in the draft or some of these big-name free agents that are about to hit the free agency market that are going to be out there, like a Queen from Baltimore. You got a White from Tampa Bay. You got guys that the Cowboys could get aggressive with, trying to go after. So that'll be interesting to watch how he does that. But ultimately, I think it'll be good for this defense, and I think it'll work good for these guys in terms of a lot of the accountability. You heard Micah talking this week on his podcast about getting locked in for 22 weeks. I think Mike Zimmer can be the guy to help him lock in.
Yeah. No, you make a good point about Rex Ryan being on that 2000s Ravens defense as well, because the capacity he was on that coaching staff was actually as a linebacker coach, which is the biggest problem for the Cowboys currently. So, yeah, I agree with everything you said. The Mike Zimmer thing he was my second choice, so I'm not squabbling about it. Here's the second question. Should Mike Zimmer be in the box or down on the field as the defensive coordinator? Dan Quinn obviously sat up in that box, got the field overview, and sent the plays down to his player that had the green dot. He wasn't really on the field. Do you think it really matters? Mike Zimmer's known to being a guy who's on the sidelines, but does it matter to you guys? What do you think, Kelly?
Me personally, I like him down on the field. And the reason why I do is you've got other guys that can sit up in the box and do that job where they're looking at the formations and seeing how the offenses line up and relay that down to Zimmer. I think you need a guy down on I like a guy that's down on the sideline and can light a fire under his defense when they're not doing. I mean, you can't do that from the box. So I like that for this defense where Zimmer can, hey, guys, let's get things together. Look, we're there was a deal that I played on the Cowboys Cave. I think it was last week or the week before, and it was Zimmer. It was full of a bunch of F-bombs and everything, but Zimmer's just lighting his defense up. Like, if you can't get your shit together, I'm gonna get it together for you. Like, I like that. You can't do that when you're sitting up in a box. So me personally, I prefer him down on the sidelines, but and that's kind of the way that he is, and I foresee him being that kind of a coach this year with the Cowboys. And it's a personal preference for me. I don't know that it really makes that big of a difference, but for me, I just like to see a guy being able to lift his defense up and walk up and down that line, talk to each one of them individually, and kind of get their heads right.
Absolutely. Mike?
Yeah, no, I agree. I'd be shocked if he's up in the box. The only time I've ever seen him is on the field, as far as I can remember. And I think a defense more than an offense needs to be on the field. Defensive coordinator. It's a game of emotions, and I think he's a teacher. He said in his press conferences, and if you heard what Darren Woodson said, you heard what some of his former players came out and said, congratulating him and talking about him. I think he's better served. I think a defensive coordinator is better served down on the field. Just my own personal opinion. I'm an emotional guy, as you guys know. I think you feed off emotion, you feed off that, and teaching. You see a lot of it with the better defensive coaches in the league. So that's just my opinion of it, and I think he'll be down there.
For sure. And Barry?
I agree with everybody here. I think that a coordinator should be on the sidelines, especially on defense. Like when you got guys that are on the sidelines and they look disengaged or they're smiling and they're getting blown out, guy on the sideline is going to make sure he keeps that stuff in check. We've seen a lot of that, over the last few years with this Dallas Cowboys team that, sometimes they look dejected, but sometimes they just look disinterested. And you need somebody to be able to kind of look at them and say, listen, what's going on here? We got a ball game to play. So I like the fact that he's definitely going to be down there. Mike Zimmer is not going to be in some box. It's just not going to happen. He's not that type of guy.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think everybody here is just echoes of each other with this whole situation. I think that he is one of those guys that is vocal. He expects you to be great and expects that he invests that belief inside of you. So he's going to hold you accountable on that field. He's going to come and get in your face if that needs to be the case. And that brings us to the next question, I think, which is basically, how do you feel that Mike Zimmer fits with the current roster? What changes do you expect him to bring concerning player personnel, technique, teaching, and overall scheme that we haven't had under the Dan Quinn era? We'll start with Barry.
I think, listen, we have to establish run stopping, obviously, right? So I would love to see if he can get anything, and I'm talking about anything, out of Mozzie Smith. If he can get Mozzie Smith to be a player, we're good. You know what I mean? Because you got a young guy who, he showed a lot of moxie in camp, that he was strong and pushing people around. If we can be able to see that, be productive on the field in year 2, then that's what I want to see. And also, too, restructuring that linebacker core, if we can be able to get it. Our secondary is pretty solid, but our linebackers, we probably had one of the worst linebacker cores in football. How is he? I'm curious to see how he's going to utilize Micah. Is he going to utilize him as a hybrid player? Keep him more at linebacker and switch him out on the line, and not keep him there because he's a little undersized. So I think it might be better off to move him around a bit. Dan Quinn wasn't really doing that over the last few seasons, right? So it's going to be interesting to see what Mike Zimmer does, but I'm really, really interested in how he goes about stopping the run.
Yeah. I think that dating back in the past, when we get a new defensive coordinator in the building, they search free agency a lot more. They're willing to sign people. You look at Mike Zimmer and some of the D tackles that he's coached up, Geno Atkins, Linville Joseph. He's got some big dudes in the middle.
Yeah.
And so whether that's re-signing Hankins, going and finding somebody in the draft, getting Mozzie Smith back up to that play weight so he can be utilized as a one tech, all of those things are in consideration and should really be the point of emphasis as far as going about this thing for defense. And AJ of Cowboys Can Fan brings up a good question here. Would you rather defense build in free agency and offense build in the draft, or vice versa if you had to pick? I'm going to kick this over back to Barry Grant to answer that question. Then we'll go down to Mike and he can answer both.
I think it really depends on what's available, right? Like, you don't want to go into free agency and spend just to spend, right? Like, if there's no talent out there, if there's nobody that can really help you get better, then what's the point of going in there? I mean, we've seen over the past few seasons, I always use this term with Jerry Jones and free agency, is that we like to bargain bazaar shop. Right? Like, let's stop trying to do that and get some quality guys. And if you can't get some quality guys, then let's turn it to the draft and see what we can do there. You know what I mean? Because we've done pretty well in the draft, turning out good players. Last season was really an albatross in regards to just not having a good grade overall. But I mean, historically, we do pretty well.
Yeah. Nah, it's like shopping at Goodwill. Every once in a while, you'll find a good hit. But in order to get good quality stuff, typically you have to spend the money to get it. So, Mike, what was your thoughts on player personnel and changes to scheme and all of that stuff with Mike Zimmer? And then also, what would your thoughts be about going in and really focusing in free agency for the defensive side, or would you rather in the draft?
Yeah, no, I mean, first of all, you got to stop the run, like my man said. I mean, that has to be. I mean, that was their Achilles heel this year, and I don't know. I'm no expert in football of why they do some things, but was it true that they wanted Mozzie and he lost a whole bunch of weight, like 30 pounds or so? I mean, everything we hyped about was his strength and everything he could do, and then you tell the guy to lose a bunch of weight. So, if that was Dan Quinn's idea, thank God his ass is gone too. So, I mean, that's just idiotic. You're going to draft a first-round pick. So, I agree. Stopping the run. I think the linebackers, you've got to get bigger at linebacker. There's no doubt about it. Secondary, I think, like I said, I think they're fine. I think we've got some pass rushers. It'll be interesting to see what happens. But as far as, with free agency, I think it's got to be a mix. I mean, you've got to have some draft guys because, of course, when you're looking at the salary cap, they're a little more dollar friendly for a few years. So you definitely got to build some in the draft. But what they need to do in free agency, they don't need to go out and spend $1 million, $1 billion, let's say. They need to spend smart. And what I want and what I've been preaching is championship mentality, guys that just want to win and play football. They're not worried about the glam. They're not worried about the lights. I mean, when you watch San Francisco, pains me to say this when I'm going to say it. When you watch San Francisco and you even watch the Chiefs and you watch the Ravens, their defenses look different. I mean, we have the talent, but they're mean, they're nasty, and they just play with an edge, and we don't have that. And and last time I promise I'll say it because I love this guy, but when you got the leader of your defense talking about I'm tired and we were tired and this, that's not the mentality that you got to have. So they need to bring in leaders. Like I saw Devin White, Queen. You need to bring in some guys that are going to hold these guys accountable, and that's what Zimmer's going to do as well. But that's long-winded answer, but that's what I would love to see. When you're talking all in, that's going to prove it to me that you're all in.
Yeah, go ahead. Hey, a Super Bowl winner 2 times in a row, Chris Jones, could hit free agency market. He would be huge if you could get him. I would feel so good. Kelly, go ahead.
Well, you stole it from me there because I was about to say that. I was going to say as far as Zimmer goes, I'm going to answer that first. Is the Zimmer thing. I'm going to just echo off the stop the run. I mean, that's the big thing. And Chris Jones would go a long way in helping that. I mean, and he's young. He's going to get a big contract though. Let's face it. He's a 2-time Super Bowl winner. So at this point right now, he's not one of those guys that's looking to chase a Super Bowl. Right now, he's looking to chase the bag. And I'm sure that's exactly what he's going to do. So could the Cowboys fit that in their spending and still address some of the other areas they need to? I'm not sure. There's a lot of restructuring that needs to happen. Obviously, Dak Prescott's going to get his deal restructured. You're looking at CeeDee Lamb. That's going to free up some things. But, the defense it's not as far off as I think that there were some things that were misleading about our defense having the number 5 defense this year, but we do have a pretty sound defense overall. The linebacker position, obviously, we all know that needs to kind of get overhauled, but there's going to be some guys out there that you can pick up, and not just the big name guys. There's some other free agents out there that you can get that you can also add to this, at a lesser price tag, so that you can still do some things and you can address it through the draft. The one thing that concerns me about the draft is, having that, we got that gap after, I think it's the 3rd. I think we don't have a 5th round pick. I don't think we got a 6th round pick. Like
or a 4th.
We're a 4th. So
well, we are supposed to get some comp picks in there. But yeah.
I think we get some complementary picks. But, obviously the thing that me and Mike had talked about is you never want to put too much stock in draft picks, just because, you look at kind of how that happened this year. They were sitting there at a training camp and they were thinking they had themselves, a good linebacker in Overshown, and then he goes out and gets injured. You just never know what's going to happen in terms of that. So I think we need, in terms of that position in particular, the linebacker, I think they need to bring in somebody that's proven, a person that what you're getting. There's no doubt about this dude. He's going to be able to be in there. He's going to be able to, shed blocks, unlike these DBs that were playing linebackers that were getting locked up at that second level. So that's my main concern, is just getting that point addressed, because, if you don't have one, it starts up front with the big guys, but if they get that second level, you're looking for your linebackers. That's where they're coming in. And our linebackers were just soft and just too small, basically. And we gotta fix that and remedy that. And I think Zimmer, in my opinion, that's going to be his priority number 1.
Yeah. No, I think that if, let's say that the Cowboys could steal away Chris Jones, that goes so far in Micah's development, because he eats up the double teams that Micah was seeing, and then you can shift Micah back to that linebacker role a little bit more on rundowns, not having to worry about him getting, ate up in the run department, because he is lighter for a defensive end and he has short arms, so it's harder for him to shed those blocks. That brings me to the last question that I had about Mike Zimmer, which was just, are you guys worried about Zimmer's approach to coaching? Do you feel like it's out of style and or won't resonate with today's players? We'll just go ahead and go to Mike Tag for this question.
Yeah, well, was it Spags in Kansas City, 65 years old, and he's a 2-time Super Bowl champion defensive coordinator. So I don't think so. I think, there's a difference in the players. I mean, I've got kids who are teenagers, and I guess you talk to them a little bit different, but the great ones you don't, because I've seen it. I've seen the great ones still want to be coached. They still want to be pushed and all of that. So to me, if you're a great defensive coordinator and you're a great coach and you're a motivator and stuff, you're gonna resonate with these guys, the ones who want to get better, and the ones who don't, get them the hell out of here, because you just don't have time for it. But I don't think there's going to be any issues with Zimmer relating him. You've heard a lot of his former, players come out. That's only been it's not like he's been out of the league forever. It's been, since 21 or 22 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Some guys on the Vikings came out. Obviously, Woodson, I talked about. You had a lot of players that came out and said what a great job he did, and others who did not like him in the beginning, but as they got older, they realized what he did for their career and how he impacted them and made them a better player. Xavier Rhodes comes to mind as one of them that talked about that. So I think he'll be fine with today's players.
Yeah. And if you saw that Brandon Cooks and Stephon Gilmore interview that those two guys did with 105.3 The Fan, they said basically, we need coaches that hold us accountable. And that's exactly what Mike Zimmer is going to do. Now, whether or not that resonates with the younger guys, I really don't care. If they're not ready to hone in and go for a championship, get them off the field. Go sign somebody off the street that wants to and has a will to go and give 100% each down. That's better than a guy that's minusculely better than him, that doesn't give 100% effort, in my opinion. So kick it over to Barry Grant. What was your thoughts about this, and do you think that he's going to work out for the DC job with so many young players, especially on defense?
I think yes. Just like what Mike was saying. If you got a coach that has a track record of success and guys, play hard for them, and the dudes that you currently have constructed on your team don't want to accept that type of coaching, then it's not the coach, it's the actual players. We have good players. The difference between us and San Francisco and Baltimore and all these other teams is that we have a finesse defense. We have no dogs. So if we have no dogs, you need a coach that is going to be able to get that potential and get that edge to them, right? So if they don't have it, you got to bring somebody in that does have it, right? And if the coach has it, then that kind of trickles down to the players, right? I've seen a guy have a motivational speech at halftime for our Dallas Cowboys. It wasn't our coach, though. It was Jimmy Johnson. I felt like I wanted that instead of what we have, right? Yeah. So we got that in Mike Zimmer on the defensive side. That's what we need. At least somebody is going to hold this team accountable for when they fuck up, right?
I wish I had the sound drop, the little horns. Nah, I agree with you. That's a great point. Is everybody that watched that at halftime that was a Cowboys fan and saw Jimmy Johnson still the fire that he had inside of him and the want for this Cowboys team to be great, man, that almost brought you to tears just thinking about where we have been at the heights of this organization and what we've been the last 29 years. And it saddens you, but it gives you hope.
As a Cowboys fan, CJ, as a Cowboys fan, and I'm 48. I've been through the mid 80s and some down times in the 90s. When you see the coach, when you see Troy Aikman, when you see Emmitt Smith, when you see Michael Irvin, when you see these guys care more than the players that are on the field, that's a problem. And that's what pisses Cowboy fans off. And that's why at the end of the game, every Cowboy fan just wanted everybody gone. Now, we've calmed down, right? But everyone gone after the game. Like Michael Irvin said, everyone's got to go. It was inexcusable for them to come out that way. And I'm not going to blame the coaches so much. I mean, some of the scheme, obviously, Quinn did. But these players got to be held accountable. And that's what I'm saying is there's got to be some accountability. And I don't think they were getting that with Quinn. I just don't think so. And it's just
too
they're going to get it with Zimmer or they're going to get out. I promise you that.
And just to add to that point that Mike was saying real quick, when CeeDee Lamb was on Mike's podcast and he said, me and Dak are good, man. We just need to get back to scoring touchdowns and making money. It made me sick because not one time did he talk about winning. And not one time did he talk about, let's get this Super Bowl. Let's get to an NFC championship and get over this hump. Talking about scoring touchdowns and money. This is what the disconnect is with Dallas Cowboys fans and the players that we currently have.
Yeah, I think that to an extent, like Micah and CD, and they were talking on Micah's little podcast and whatnot about being held accountable, and it's like they were talking. It's 7 months. Can we not give 7 months of our hard invested time and effort into going and getting this thing? And I think it was a little bit of a maturity and realization by those two. Like, if not us as leaders, who's going to do it? Because these so many years prior to this, it hasn't been there. So hopefully those two guys do bring that same mentality into training camp throughout the entire season, that if not us, if we're not going to be the leaders, then who else? I think that's going to go a long ways. Hopefully we see a little bit of that from the coaching staff, as Mike alluded to, and Barry with Dan Quinn. He was a little bit too buddy-buddy, in my opinion. I'm ready for Mike Zimmer to come in here and show what he has. Kelly, go ahead and finish this conversation off real quick.
Yeah, I think Quinn was a little bit more of a player's coach, and Zimmer's more of kind of an accountability coach. I don't really think he's there to be friends with them. I think he's there to make them better. And I mean, I think whether it be professional athletes or it be professionals in the real world, I think everybody looks to wants somebody to hold them accountable. I mean,
Absolutely.
if you've got nobody holding you accountable, what's driving you to do your job? What's driving you to be better? And that goes for anybody. That's on the field, that's off the field. You want something or someone to be holding you accountable. So I think these players, especially these ones competing at the highest level, they want somebody that's going to hold them accountable. And you sit there and we sit there and we talk about like, okay, well, is it ever going to fly? Because in this day and age, you've got these players and they do their podcasts and they do. But you look at the New England Patriots. It wasn't that long ago that Bill Belichick was winning Super Bowls with New England, and they weren't doing that shit. They weren't doing no podcasts. You didn't see them before a damn playoff game sitting there posting we're having a victory party after, only to go out and get their ass whooped in the first round. You didn't see that out of a Bill Belichick coach team, and that went over well with those guys because they knew there was a lot of people in that squad that was like, look, Bill was a hard ass, but he brought out the best in us. And those players like that and they respect that. And I think that as a professional athlete playing at the highest level, if you can't get on board with that, well, then you don't need to be wearing the star on your helmet. You shouldn't be on this team. And then they got to find a coach and be able to, those coaches have to be able to look and make decisions and say, who are the guys on the team that have that attitude and are going to be receptive to what we're trying to do here, and who are the ones that we need to ship on out of here and get them the hell out this damn locker room. So
Absolutely. And with that, I wanted to bring up this little graph of Mike Zimmer, 2017 to 2013, and in specifically this area of him against the Shanahan tree, because that seems kind of like our Achilles heel, as we can't beat the Niners. We can't beat these teams that have a tree from them. We lost to the Dolphins. Green Bay is another one there. So I think that we're going to see a better version of a defense. Maybe we won't have the same heights as a Dan Quinn with all the turnovers. However, an average defense getting put on the field that is consistent, I think can go a long ways in helping this team. And then after they get groomed, and it might take a little bit, kind of like the Mike McCarthy offense, but once they get into that system and really understand what he is trying to implement, it's going to go such a long way. And I think that this team has the players right now. Add in the draft picks, add in the free agency, and I think we can make a run in this, especially with a wide open NFC side. And the Niners, they have to pay some guys. The Eagles, they're looking at possibly letting some guys go. I know Hassan Reddick requested a trade. So, some of those teams might be getting a little bit worse, and you have the potential to get better. So you got to do it now. I wanted to bring up the familiar faces in new places. We obviously got, why did I almost say Khalil Shakir? We got Floyd, we've got Kellen Moore, we've got Joe Witt Jr., Aiden Dirty, and Dan Quinn. And so what NFC East coaching hire would you consider the best out of those five right there? Obviously, Aiden is went to the Seahawks as their DC, so four really. But which one would you consider the best and the biggest loss to the Cowboys out of those three that left the team? Kelly, go ahead and start us off.
So I don't honestly, when I talk about like a coach that we lost, like I don't know, man. I didn't really. I was kind of, I looked at this defense and I didn't really see anybody that I wanted to keep. I thought we kept the guys that I wanted to keep. So I can't really say that I thought there was a loss there. So, I look at what the Cowboys did, and I think that we made in the long run, I think we made the best hire because our defense was the one that looked the worst and the biggest of moments. So, I mean, me personally, I think that we made the best hire because we made the change. We were like, all right, we got to make a change. We can't run this back as constructed. And so, I mean, not to try to play a cop out here, but I like what we did. I like bringing in Zimmer, and I like getting rid of the guys that we got because, I mean, the thing is if you keep Dan Quinn's guys, a lot of his guys around, not said like I like Al Harris. I think he was I like the fact that we blocked him from going to interview with Washington. I don't want them stealing him away. But I mean, I didn't really have any issue with the guys that left. I was fine with that. I'm on board with what we did. I thought that was the best move.
So you would rather have Mike Zimmer than Joe Witt Jr.?
Me personally, yes, I was fine with that. Okay. I was fine with that. I thought it was I thought a lot of Quinn's guys have his principles and kind of the same philosophies, and I didn't want that on this team, and I didn't want to take a chance of that. I thought that we needed a change, and we needed something different, and we needed something new, whether that was Zimmer or Rex Ryan or or just anybody else. So I wasn't really heartbreaking or banging my head against the wall that we lost with. No.
If you had to pick one of those hires for the other team that you thought was the best, whether it's Kellen Moore, Dan Quinn, Joe Witt, who would you say for those other teams you have the most trust in being a good coach?
I would probably say Witt and with him and Quinn, just because I do think that I'm not going to sit there and take away from Quinn and what he's done throughout his time, and I think that Witt was one of his guys, and he's going to bring along some of his toughness and stuff like that. But so I think I would go there, because for me personally, like Kellen Moore is not. I don't really have much confidence in Kellen Moore, and I don't think that they really put him. I don't see him having much success working with Jalen Hurts. Maybe that's just me because I hate the Eagles. But if I have to go with anybody, I'm going to say Quinn and Witt with Washington, because I think that they can do some things for that team. But also the reason I think they can do things with that team is because of how horrible of a shape Washington's in, right? You can pretty much only go up from where those guys are at. So I think that they'll have a more immediate impact, whereas I think these other guys have got a more uphill battle, because, you look at a guy like Kellen Moore, the Eagles, granted their offense had struggles, but I mean, this is a team that ultimately still won, double-digit games last year. So it's going to be more of a challenge for him to make an impact on that team than it will be for Witt and, Dan Quinn.
Absolutely. And I think that also another thing that has to be said about Dan Quinn is he brings over players that are familiar with his scheme. So you can expect a Jaron Kearse, a Dante Fowler to jump ship and go to the Commanders, because that's what he does. So he's going to have some guys that already know what he wants to implement there. And like you said, they can only kind of go up. So, Mike, did you have a favorite hire, or did you kind of just think kind of what Kelly thought about this?
Yeah, I mean, we don't need to take a lot of time. It was just addition by subtraction. I don't mean that in a negative way. I just think something had to change. They weren't going to change the quarterback. They didn't change the coach. You can't come back and run this back with everything the way it was. I mean, you have to change up something. So I just think it was more addition by subtraction. I think Witt's good. I think Quinn's good. I think he'll do, the best job he can in Washington. That's not, that's asking a lot. But hey, just real quick, just shout out to Mark Holmes, Cowboys content legend, is hanging out with us, watching the show. And I gave my age, and he said I'm just a baby. So I appreciate it, because some people who hate on me, some of them call me grandpa when I do my videos. So I appreciate someone thinking I still feel young. So I appreciate some love. So thank you.
There you go. Shout out to Mark. There was somebody that brought up, do you think that we should bring on a Steve Wilks, which was the former DC for the 49ers, known for a lot of different stints as a secondary coach in the NFL. He was with the Panthers for some time, a few other teams, a long track record in college. So would you bring him on to any capacity, Mike? Or do you kind of think,
I would, one, only because San Francisco, they did him dirty, threw him under the bus, and waited till all the jobs, because they knew he'd get a DC job somewhere, and they kind of waited. I think that was nasty, and he's a great coach. You saw what he did. Their defense was good. He's always been good where he's at. Solid defensive coordinator. I think you bring him in as a defensive, assistant coach, head coach, or whatever title you got to give him to make him feel good. But bringing him on, if you can get great coaches, you can never have enough of them.
Yeah. And last but not least, my man Barry Grant Jr.
Yeah, I think Witt has potential to be good, right? But it's yet to be seen. So he's going to get the opportunity to be able to spread his wings and show his real talent with the Commanders. Now, he could end up being one of the best coordinators or young coordinators out there, whatever. We have to see it first. The best hire, I think, out of everything was Kellen Moore. Thank you, Philadelphia Eagles, for sinking your season before it even started. I appreciate it. This is great. Yeah, if you thought that Jalen Hurts looked worse before, it's gonna be great. It's gonna be great.
I love the turnaround now. They're fans that dog Kellen Moore and dogged him so much. Now they got to kind of turn their,
right.
So bad, with the Cow. He was
Yeah.
with Dak. Now he's with Hurts. So it's just funny listening to that.
If backpedaling was a sport, Philadelphia would win every year.
Oh man, that's awesome. That's a good point. Is that yeah? I mean, he runs a lot of the same route concepts on certain plays, which muddles things up in specific parts of the field, and that's not good for a quarterback that already has problems reading different levels of the field.
Right.
Unless he's rolling out of the pocket. Anyways, we'll bring this back up based on the coaching hire / changes. What team do you think has the best shot of knocking off the Cowboys for the division next year, if any? We'll start with my guy Mike Tag.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to say it, I still think it's Philly, right? I mean, I don't think the Giants are there. I don't think Washington's there. Philly's they'll be a thorn. But to Barry's point, they got Kellen Moore, so that's probably a good thing, good thing for us. So that's who I would probably go with, Philly.
Sorry, I had to grab myself another brewski
I didn't
here, boys.
Sorry.
Go ahead and roll on that same thought, Kelly.
I gotta agree just from a talent standpoint. Also Philadelphia. I think unless something drastically changes at at some of the most fundamental positions, which is quarterback for either one of those teams, whether it be New York or Washington, Dallas and Philly got the best two quarterbacks in the division, and that's you need franchise quarterbacks. And Washington doesn't have one, New York doesn't have one. So I think that it's got to be Philly if you just look at things objectively. Even though I'd love to say it'd be somebody besides them, but I think it'll still be a 2-man race next year between Dallas and Philly.
Yeah, and Barry.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Mike and Kelly, man. I mean, it's Philly. They still have a lot of talent. They still are going to be very good. They're still going to give us fits, and we're going to give them fits, and it's going to be a neck and neck race to the top of the division, and then we're going to beat up on the rest of the teams that are in the division. So, that's kind of how it's been over the last few seasons. I think it's going to remain that way.
Yeah. I think that the only wrench that could be thrown in this whole thing is like Kelly mentioned, the Commanders get a quarterback, and he balls out, kind of has a similar season to a CJ Stroud this year. So it's looking probably like Drake May, but you can't completely rule out the Caleb Williams ties to a Cliff Kingsbury. That's the OC there at Washington now. So we'll see. They could make an offer and jump up there to the number 1 overall pick. My guy Kai 001 says, were there any college defensive coordinators that you guys think would have been a nice fit if the Cowboys wanted to go that route? I don't watch too much college, but I know that the Michigan DC went on and followed, I believe, Harbaugh to why did I almost say San Francisco, LA. So that was the only one that I really know a lot about. And then somebody else brought up I don't know where that comment went. We'll just go to the next thing. Sorry, guys. And then, were you okay with losing Dan Quinn and or Joe Witt Jr.? We kind of already talked about that. It didn't seem like any of us were completely, at a loss of words for losing either of those guys. We said it earlier on the podcast that, I mean, you had to make some kind of change at those positions. Not necessarily Joe Witt Jr., because I think that the Cowboys really did want him as the DC. However, Dan Quinn, I don't know why they were dragging their feet, like Kelly mentioned. That should have been after that loss, and you figured out what you were doing with Mike McCarthy. I think that the writing was on the wall for Dan Quinn. You just honestly had to fire him. Maybe there was a little bit of holdup because he is beloved by the players. But man, you can't continue to do the same thing over and over and over and expect different results. So, did anybody else have any comments on that, or you just want to roll?
Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I did put out a tweet on Twitter that was asking for some questions, and my guy Urban Cowboy said, considering we have a good mix of young players blossoming and aging vets, do you feel, assuming a Dak extension happens, we could truly reach a point in the near future where we go back to 5 wins and enter a true rebuild? I feel like we're constructed to win now, but it seems McClay has built this roster well to be sustainable for years to come. So do you think that there is a possibility of a rebuild in the next 5 years, or do you think that we're going to continue to chug along like we have and compete in this division, maybe continuing to falter in the playoffs, but we're always going to be right there? Barry, go ahead and start us off, man.
Yeah, I think the only way that you see it go into a full-on rebuild is if Dak starts to have some real health issues after this extension, right? Like if he signs the extension and then we're set up and he starts to erode physically, that's when you'll probably see the organization have to decide to make a switch, right? And say, okay, we're not going anywhere. It's not looking like he's going to get any better because he continuously gets hurt. What's the point of continuing going down this road? So that's the only reason. That's the only way I can see this actually happening. I think as long as they have Dak, as long as they're paying him the money that they're going to be paying him, they're always going to try to be competitive and try to see how they can be able to kind of retool the team on the fly without necessarily going to a full rebuild.
Yeah. Kelly?
Yeah, I agree. I don't think that they're going to have to worry about doing a rebuild. I mean, this is Cowboys got I think it's the second youngest team in the league. So when you look at that from a talent standpoint, I mean, as long as they're able to retain a lot of this talent, which I mean, I don't see any reason why they not. Look like they'll be able to, Dak's going to get a contract extension, which is going to open up CeeDee Lamb, Michael Parsons. You're going to be able to. You've already got Trayvon locked up. Hopefully they can get a deal work in the future with Bland to keep him on. But I mean, this Cowboys team tends to draft pretty well, so they keep finding these gems in the later rounds. And they've been able to consistently do that. I don't see, unless Will McClay, goes away, I don't really see that changing in the near future. So, yeah, I mean, I think we'll keep competing. The thing is, obviously, as we all want to see us get over the hump. But when you listen, when the season first ended and I saw the way it ended, obviously I wanted to blow the whole thing up. That's my first reaction. Get rid of everybody, send them all packing, cut Dak, fire Quinn, fire McCarthy. You want everybody gone. It's an emotional time, right? And a lot of the Cowboys' former players kind of had that same sentiment. But after a while, you start listening to them talk, and you start hearing some of the people talk, and even people that don't like the Cowboys, and they start talking about it and saying, this Cowboys team is pretty close. They're close. They're close. They need to figure some things out. They're a few pieces away, but I know we would all rather want to win the Super Bowl every year. That's the goal. But it's really something hard to do, and it's something you have to build towards, and it's a process, right? So I understand that, and I just unfortunately things can't happen as fast. I want them to happen a little bit quicker, but I think I'd rather be heading this direction than taking steps backwards to where, we had a 12-win season this year. Then the next year it's down to 10. And then the next year you're winning 9. And, the thing about, with Dak, his whole career is every year he's at a winning season. So not too many teams can look at their quarterback and their team overall and say, hey, since 2016, but besides the year Dak got injured, be like, we're having a winning season and we're into the playoffs pretty much every single year and competing for the division. So, I mean, that is something. I mean, obviously we all want more, but I'd take that over trending backwards because I'm looking at the Eagles right now. And even though I say it's a 2-man race, I think the Eagles are starting to take steps backwards. And granted they did make it to the Super Bowl, but they didn't win the Super Bowl. And now they're starting to take trends backwards because they've paid their quarterback Jalen Hurts all that money. And now it's kind of hard for them to start filling some of them roster spots. They don't have that rookie QB deal no more. So now they're dealing with it. Whereas I think the Cowboys have dealt with it pretty good with how they paid Dak and still been able to compete.
Yeah. No, and you make a good point about the Cowboys continually making the playoffs. Ultimately, I think that's what allowed Mike McCarthy to keep his job, is because we've seen a Jason Garrett in here going 8-8, making the playoffs, losing, going, continually to flip-flop season after season based on their strength of schedule, whereas Mike McCarthy stays pretty consistent, and he's always has the team competing. We just have to have more playoff success. The best way to have playoff success is to get to the playoffs. So I didn't have a problem with retaining Mike. To answer the question a little bit, I think that realistically, I don't see a rebuild in the future as long as Dak deal does get done, because Dak is a top 10 quarterback. If you have a top 10 quarterback, you are always going to be competing for the playoffs or for your division, in my opinion, unless that guy gets hurt. So I don't see the rebuild coming. However, I do understand some of those Cowboys fans that saw what Kansas City did, and they had a good quarterback in Alex Smith, and he was making the playoffs, but they saw something in Patrick Mahomes to say, listen, maybe we should use a first-round pick on this guy that we think can be special. We have all the pieces. Let's go invest. Give him a year and then see what he can do. And we've seen Green Bay have the same type of mentality, taking their quarterback a little bit earlier than they probably should, but it seems like it's worked again with Jordan Love. So you got to take a page out of some other franchises' books to an extent. But quite frankly, as you said, I am more interested in continually making the playoffs than going flip-flopping and the possibility of maybe getting one of those guys, because you have to have really, really, really good talent evaluators to nail a quarterback. That is the hardest position to nail in the draft process anyways. So to just expect that you're going to get somebody better than Dak is kind of a false hope, in my opinion. We'll throw it over here to Mike to answer the question as well.
Yeah, no, and I mean, just to kind of echo what you guys said, I mean, Dak Prescott, we understand where the issues are in the playoffs, but he was second in the MVP, voting. I mean, it is what it is, but I think they need to maybe push him, bring some competition in. I think competition breeds out excellence, and I think it's something that you guys, that they could do. I think they've kind of coddled him a little bit. I think they need to push him a little bit more. Maybe, McCarthy, first year under system, he had his best year. He had his best year ever. But like Dak, is like every other quarterback not named Mahomes. He's going to have to get some help. And what I mean by that, it was the running game. I mean, you look at the running game was non-existent for most of the year. I mean, you couldn't get short yardage. You couldn't get the dirty yards. You couldn't sustain drives to the run. You couldn't do anything. And if you can't run the ball, like I said, and even Mahomes, I mean, I would have bet my paycheck halfway through the year, there's no way in hell Kansas City's going to the Super Bowl. But what happened? Obviously, you got Mahomes, which is a good thing. But Pacheco started running the ball. They started to get that running game going and things happened.
And that defense, man.
And the defense. But I mean, the defense for Dallas was good when we had the lead. When that's what our defense strength was. Yeah. That's what Quinn was good at. When he had to make adjustments, he couldn't. So I don't know about all the rebuild. I don't know in the NFL today if you rebuild. I mean, you look at Houston, did they rebuild? They made the playoffs the next year. You look at these teams that have these big years, they go down and then they go back up. I think with free agency and the salary cap and everything, it's almost like reloading. You either take a step back and then you can reload. It's like someone put in the chat, Washington has $80 million of cap space. If they want to go make something happen and make some noise, they have their ability to do it. But do you have the organization that's going to spend the money and it's going to want to do that? But, Dak Prescott is, I mean, you move on from him and go get Chad Hutchinson and Drew Henson and go down that list that we had those years. Be very careful what you wish for.
Or be Cleveland.
Cleveland. How many quarterbacks have they gone through? They paid Deshaun Watson and this and that. Dak is still a top quarterback. And as long as you have a top quarterback, you're going to pretty much be in the playoffs or at least in contention every single year.
Absolutely. My guy, Barry Grant Jr. has to jump off. Us three are going to continue to roll, but I want to let him shout out his socials and stuff one more time. Honestly, if you guys are sports fans, go check out his show. He has such great content on all platforms, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, posts his stuff up on Spotify, all that stuff. So please do check him out. He's a great content creator and more than just the Cowboys field. Go ahead, Barry.
Nah, listen, I appreciate being on with you guys, man. This was fun, and hopefully I get invited again so we can talk more Cowboys, man, because this was cool. But yeah, definitely catch me on all social media platforms, All Even Podcasts. Hopefully you guys like my stuff. If not, you can always drop me a comment and say I suck as well. I always like to have some conversations with the people that are in the comments. So like I said, this was fun, man. Salute to everybody, Mike Tag, Kelly, EJ. This was fun. So hopefully we could do it again soon.
Absolutely, man.
Nice
Peace out.
All right, guys. Later.
All right. Hey, and real quick to answer a question I don't know if he's still sticking around in the chat, but I saw Mark Holmes ask if I was going to go to the draft in Detroit. I wasn't originally planning to, but I'm actually thinking that I do want to try to get it's not too far from me. It's only 12 hours. So I think I'm actually currently trying to plan going to the draft in Detroit. I know that's kind of a cold and nasty city, but I really enjoyed the draft in Kansas City last year. So yes, Mark, I'm going to try to hit up that way.
Yeah, let
That'd
me
be
know
dope.
because I was going to do the Hall of Fame, but Darren Woodson didn't get, he got screwed. So my son loved the draft. We had a great time. So I may meet up with you out there.
Yeah, it's an
There you
awesome
go.
time.
That'll be fun. I wanted to bring up this question. So, Drew Fisher, go Cowboys, or go Boys, I'm sorry. Do you think that that's what they did with Trey Lance, hedging their bet, basically spending that 4th-round pick and trying to get a guy that they can groom, kind of in the Alex Smith, Mahomes esque conversation kind of a thing? If I can just say my opinion first, I think that they see that he's a very raw quarterback. They see that he has talent. He has all the tools to be very good. And quite frankly, you have one of the better quarterback developers in the building in Mike McCarthy. He's been proven to do this with younger guys and groom them into starting caliber quarterbacks. Now, is that saying that Trey Lance is going to be better than Dak Prescott? I probably would err on probably not. But it's one of those things. Jerry Jones invested that 4th-round pick, and he's in the building. So develop the hell out of this kid. Continue to see him grow. Continue to get the grasp of the offense. And I don't see a world where Cooper Rush is on the roster this year. And that means that if we do continue to blow these teams out that are lesser teams, we will get to see some Trey Lance and see what we have in him. So we'll throw it over here to Kelly, and then he can answer the question as well.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you spend a 4th-round pick like that on a QB. You don't do it just to let him sit and waste on your roster. I mean, you invested, that 4th-round pick. I mean, you just look at some of the guys that, I mean, Dak Prescott, for example, is a 4th-round pick. You can find gems in the 4th round. So, I mean, that's a value pick right there. So I absolutely think that they're trying to develop Trey Lance into something, and whether he turns into something and then they leverage that into try to trade and get something more than what they got for him, maybe a 3rd round or maybe a 2nd-round pick or maybe another 4th-round pick, who knows? But yeah, they're absolutely trying to develop Lance. And I think that, organizationally, that's where the Cowboys have kind of failed, is not drafting a quarterback because, I get it. Dak Prescott has been our guy, but I think you should always be trying to draft and develop quarterbacks. I think it's just good practice. I think that, to have a good guy behind there developing, learning, you can turn him into something, leverage that into draft picks. Or if, heaven forbid, you want to move on from your quarterback, you can do that. I mean, the Cowboys aren't in a position to do that right now with Dak Prescott, even if they wanted to. If they wanted to move on from it, they're just not in a good position. I mean, you get those people that are out there that are steadfast. I know Ultra is one of them in the chat there who's very vocal about moving on from Dak Prescott. It's just not that easy, though. If you move on from Dak Prescott this year, it's a throwaway year. And I think you've got too much talent, too much youth on this team to just throw a season away because you're upset that your quarterback hasn't been able to, he hasn't had a great postseason he hasn't delivered in the postseason, because especially with this year, last year I look at it absolutely 110%. I really did put a lot of, like 90% of that I put on Dak. I thought he made the turnovers, he did us a disservice. This year, the defense couldn't stop anybody. So even if Dak would have not had a turnover, even if you take them 7 points away, Green Bay's still beating us because our defense couldn't stop a nosebleed in that game. Yeah. So I just think that, yes, develop Trey Lance and continue to try to develop him. But I think, it's too – at this point, it's too late. You've got Dak Prescott. You're going forward with Dak Prescott. But at the same time, Trey Lance, pushing him, giving him reps in training camp and the offseason and stuff, trying to get him better. That's what you want to do as an organization. So we'll see how that turns out.
Yeah. Mike, what was your thoughts on that?
I mean, just to add on just a little bit, because I agree with what Kelly said. I mean, it's just really going to be interesting to see how they set up the contract. I mean, that's going to tell you, because I mean, realistically, if you want them to spend money and people want them to spend money, they're going to have to extend Dak, and they're going to have to, resign or do a new contract for CD to kind of get some money available now. If they don't, they can stay pat and stand where they're at and just run with the same team, and they're going to lose some guys, and they're over the cap and this and that. So I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how they do the contract, but I have no issues. I mean, I to me, after the way the season ended, no job is safe. I'd have no problem open competition with Lance and Dak and let the best man win. I have no problem with it, but obviously money comes into effect if they sign to a huge deal and they don't have an out, then you're pretty much locked into them for the time. So that's what I say. It'd be interesting to see how the contract looks when it's all said and done.
Yeah. That's an interesting point, because I mean, Daniel Jones to an extent has an out right after this year. And everybody wants to clown on New York for giving him that contract, but they listened to their head coach. Brian Daboll gave Daniel Jones the best season he had played thus far in his career, knocked down on the turnovers, upped his touchdowns, everything was looking better. And I remember getting on before the season, I was telling Mike, like, Daniel Jones could be, continuing to go up and up. Obviously it didn't work out like that, but they made that contract where they did have that out after the 2 years. So maybe we do see something like that with Dak. We'll move on here to this next question. Are there any offseason moves that would make you feel confident about this team's chance at playoff success? Or do you think we go in with low expectations and just hope for the best once again? I think we've already kind of talked about it. The Chris Jones thing would be huge. L'Jarius Sneed has been linked to the team a little bit. Patrick Queen has been brought up. DJ Reader is a person that I would be interested in. Is there anybody outside of those names that you guys are heavily interested in, or do you kind of feel like build to the draft? Go ahead, Mike.
No, I mean, linebacker, like I know Devin White and obviously Queen. I mean, we need someone at linebacker, like a leader at linebacker. I mean, you look at all the great teams, they always had someone at linebacker. The one miss we have is we've got our own Ken Norton Jr. headed to Washington to be the linebackers coach with Dan Quinn over there. So that breaks my heart to see him wearing Washington gear. But we need some dogs. And that's what I said. We need to bring, especially at the linebacker, we need somebody in there that's going to make their presence known and that's going to help with accountability and be a leader on that defense. That's what I want to see. And that's why I say echo the all in. It don't mean nothing. I need to see actions speak louder than words, and I want to see what they're going to do in free agency, not the draft. I don't want to hear about the draft. I want free agency. I want to know who they're going to bring in that's got some championship pedigree and a mentality to help get this team over the hump.
Yeah. Kelly?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, not just point to one. I think we've kind of talked about them and stuff, but I mean, as far as like, as free agents, I definitely want them to be aggressive in the free agency period. I don't think we can afford to sit back and chill. I talked to Mike. I said, I'm going to be, if within the first 24 hours, if I don't hear some names getting linked to Dallas in terms of, hey, they're coming in for they're coming to Dallas to visit. Like if I don't hear that in the first 24 hours, I'm gonna start getting pissed. I don't want the Dallas Cowboys because the thing is, like we were talking about, obviously free agency doesn't begin till, what is it? Is it March? I can't keep forgetting. Is it March 13th, 14th, somewhere around there?
I know it's an early.
I'm not
days,
sure.
but
it happens before the draft, though.
I do know that when free agency begins, there's a lot of guys that already have deals in place. I mean, they're not technically allowed to start signing people until the start of free agency, but the week of, there's teams that are in talks with guys. They just can't really release those because you see it all the time. Free agency begins at midnight. And you've got guys getting the next day. You've got this guy's getting signed. This guy's getting signed. This guy. I mean, it happens like that. It happens quick because that's how the NFL. That's how it moves. You better get on it. So if you've got guys on here that you want, you've got guys targeted. You better be on it like immediately. So that's what I look forward with the Cowboys and free agency. And I will say, I hope they address the running back position through free agency. There's been a lot of talk about Derrick Henry. I'm on board with Derrick Henry. I'm on board with him getting a guy that's a proven guy that you can come in there and there can be a big physical, bruising kind of guy that can be more of a kind of a bully to push you around. I'd be all on board with the Derrick Henry signing. So,
yeah. From what I understand, I think that the agents can be in contact with the teams and talking and stuff like that. If the players have a checklist of like, I want to be a starter, I want to be in a 4-3 scheme, I want to this, the agent figures out all of that stuff puts the name out and throws it out to the teams and, sees if there's a nibble on it. So all of that stuff moves really quick. You got to be willing to go and search for your guys if you want them. I think Mike Zimmer has to be vocal in assessing the team where it's at right now and understanding, okay, this is what we have. What we have is good and these facets of the game, but I need a linebacker. I need a big defensive tackle, one tech. I need this. I need that. And willing, I know that this is, it's his job right here because it's a 1 year, basically 1 year deal if Mike McCarthy gets fired, basically. But you have to be vocal knowing our team wasn't good enough. That version was not good enough on defense. We have to fill the holes before the draft ever starts. You want to fill those holes, and obviously you can't get all of the super names, the Patrick Queens, Chris Jones, everybody. You can't get everybody, but you can get damn good players regardless, and they can help your team instantly. So, that's one of the things that I think that the Cowboys need to be adamant about during free agency, kind of like Mike was saying. We'll go on to the next one. What does Jerry's quote of all in really mean to you, and what moves/signings would show he is for real? We kind of answered this in a roundabout way earlier. But all in to me means that you're being aggressive not only in the draft, but also in free agency. You're going out and you're signing a big name free agent, not somebody that's 35 that used to have a name like a Gerald McCoy. I'm talking a guy that is a dog right now, today, that is going to get his money from his team, or you're going to go and beat his team's price and get him on your team. That's what I want to see in free agency. And then I want to see in the draft, I want to see aggressiveness. If your guy is so much better than the other guys you have in your stack, let's talk about a Jackson Powers Johnson. If he's your number one center and you see that you have to get above certain teams, leverage some of your draft to go get the player that you believe in that can help and instantly impact for your team. I want to see both of those aggressive natures in the draft and free agency. Mike, do you kind of feel the same way, or?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's like I said, you've got to see some in free agency. I mean, that's all in to me is making serious signings that are going to improve the team now, and not some has-beens. I want to see it, like you said. I want to see some guys that can bring it now. That's what that'll show me something. I don't want the draft. I don't want them. I want to have a good draft, but they always put this pressure on these draft picks, and they never get anyone. I mean, yeah, they got Gilmore, and that was nice, and Cooks. I'll give them their kudos for that, but they have got to be more aggressive in free agency. They haven't been in a long time, and all we hear about, the Brandon Carr, ever since that when they've been gun shy. Yeah. Man, don't give me that shit, man. Go in there, and that's what I get envious of some of these other teams is they find a way and they get it done. I mean, you look at what the Rams did. You look obviously what the Bucks did. You look at what these teams going to the Super Bowl, what they did. And we just sit back and we're just, we're going to build through the draft. It's our philosophy. We're going to do that. Well, it's been 30 years. It ain't working. Let's try something else, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Kelly?
Well, absolutely. I agree. As like I said, I mean, you look for this team to not do the same old, which is kick the tires on some dude that's on his fourth or fifth team, and you're thinking, or this guy that maybe he needs a fresh start. He was a former first-round pick, but he absolutely did squat on this other team, but we're going to take a shot on him, and maybe he will work out, maybe he won't. It's the same old thing. It's like, the Cowboys are like that guy that goes and looks at all the brand new cars, the top cars, the top rated cars, but then they ended up at a buy here, pay here lot. And they try to sell us on that, on that car. They're like, this car used to be really good though. What they don't tell you is that it's got an oil leak and the transmission's slipping a little bit, right? So I want the Cowboys to not do the same stuff that they've been doing. Go and get me some proven guys. Go get me some guys that are winners. Go get me some guys that we know are going to come in and they're going to be impact guys that we're going to be talking about at the end of the season and say, these are the key moves that put the Cowboys into the Super Bowl or into the NFC Championship game. These are the moves that the Cowboys made. Because you can look at a team like a San Francisco, and when they went out and got aggressive and decided they're going to go get Christian McCaffrey, when you went out and they grabbed a guy last year from Philly and Hargraves and signed him in free, you look at the moves that they made, and you can say, even though they didn't win the Super Bowl, you can say those are the moves that put them in the Super Bowl. That's what put them over the top. That's what made them better than the rest of the teams in the NFC. Or you can, I wouldn't really say Kansas City because they didn't really make a whole bunch of moves. They were criticized for their lack thereof, but they got a
quarterback there.
Yeah,
I mean, you got to think about this though: is Kansas City had a contract dispute with Chris Jones this offseason.
Yeah.
So and they made that work and said, look, buy into this, and we're gonna take you to the promised land. You just got to buy into this defense. And early on, their safety Reed was like, man, this defense has the potential to be really, really good.
Yeah.
They all bought into it. They all bought into Spags, and they went and were one of the best defenses and held it down for the offense that couldn't catch a cold early on in the season. Like Mike said earlier, would have bet his entire paycheck that they wouldn't make it to the Super Bowl. Not even win it, just wouldn't even make it to the Super Bowl. So it's one of those things, man. You got to have players that buy in, and you got to be willing to go out there and get some players as well. So let's bring up this question. With the new DC in place, Zimmer, what do you expect from the defense this upcoming season? Which I guess brings up the question kind of like, how do you expect him to use Micah? Do you feel like he's going to be using a little bit more linebacker role? Is he going to be primarily a D end, or is it kind of a wait and see game, whether or not we can get the appropriate pieces in here to play linebacker and defensive tackle, and, kind of a wait and see game? Kelly, go ahead.
I think that their plan for Micah, and I think that this is, I think he stays. I think he stays where he's at. I think he stays at that defensive end position. I don't really see them kind of moving him to the more hybrid role. I know that's kind of been a hot topic, but I think that. Well, I think Micah knows that he can get the biggest bag playing defensive end, and that's not saying anything bad about Micah Parsons. But I mean, if he's playing a little bit more linebacker, and that, that's a little more contract leverage type deal. Well, linebackers don't get paid as much as defensive ends, this, that, whatever. I think he's still going to get paid, but I think they like him where he's at. I think you can utilize him and kind of move him around, but I mean, I don't see anything wrong with him being at that defensive end position. I think what the problem is that we don't really have anybody generating pressure on the other side or up the middle. And the problem is, we got a guy like DeMarcus Lawrence on the other side that has been talked about and heralded as he's a great run stopper, which he is, and he creates pressures, but he's not getting sacks. And I think you can find a guy off the edge that can do both, that can be good against the run and sack the quarterback, because when Mike is getting double teamed and sometimes triple teamed, there has to be somebody off the other side of that line that can get to the quarterback. And we just haven't consistently seen that happen on this defensive line. So, it's one of the reasons why I think that, a Chris Jones would be a great move. Or, also, I think that the Cowboys should look at drafting another edge pass rusher in the draft with the first couple of picks, because I think that they could use that. Just another guy coming off the other end. So I like Micah at that end. I mean, anytime you can get a guy that can consistently get double-digit sacks every year, I don't really know that it's a smart idea to move him from that position. I think it's smart just keep him there, let him keep doing what he's doing. But I think he needs some help on the other side of that defensive line.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, Dan Quinn's philosophy for getting pressures was utilizing a lot of stunts. Stunts take time to develop. Sure, you have one of the fastest players in the league with Micah Parsons, and sure, he got sacks off of stunts because it helps him not have to be, fighting through double teams and triple teams. But if that's at a hindrance to your other players on the defensive line, is it really at a net plus for your entire defense? Is my kind of question. So Mike Zimmer is one of those guys that isn't afraid to bring blitzes from safeties, from cornerbacks. He's aggressive with his DBs. I expect less stunts from him and more just regular straight up pressures. just sending 4 and expecting your back half to, because like I said, he is a secondary specialist coach. Giving different looks on the back end, which confuses the quarterback, slows down that internal clock, and allows your true pass rushers to get in there and do work. So for me, I think that Dan Quinn philosophy shift from all the stunts and stuff is going to go a long way with the D-Law sack numbers coming back up, in my opinion. But go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say, Kelly and I had James Washington on, 2-time Super Bowl champ of the Cowboys and the team of the 90s. And we talked about the defense. We talked about Parsons. And he said, what do dogs do? They hunt. And you got to let your dogs hunt. And you don't worry. He said Charles Haley, when he was with the Cowboys, they knew he wasn't going to contain. It was up to the guys behind him to take care of it. His job was get to the quarterback. And I think so I'll listen to James Washington and say that we've got to do whatever it takes to just let Micah Parsons hunt and just get to the quarterback. And, it's up to our linebackers and it's up to the safeties to make sure that they protect him, on containment and things like that. Because I know we got criticized a little bit for that, during the year. So that's just my opinion of it. I'll take James's words for it and follow his lead.
Absolutely. We're going to bounce here into this last question from Twitter, and then I think we got a phone call coming up. So what will it take for the Jones family to put their egos aside and put the team first and hire an actual GM to run the team? For me, I think Will McClay he is the GM. Truthfully, I think that's what Jerry Jones tells him, like, hey, we're following you. Obviously, the owner for any team has final say. I mean, I think a lot of people get that construed and think that the owners just step back and don't ever have a say in anything. I guarantee if the Chiefs wanted to trade Travis Kelce or Patrick Mahomes right now, they would go to the owner and get it okayed. So, I mean, he has a say in everything. Now, whether or not he is the prime, guy pulling the strings and the shots on a lot of the moves, I don't necessarily think it is. I think it's more Stephen Jones. And that's where it's like, does it get any better? Because he's going to inherit this stuff, and does he kind of take a back seat, even though he's been in that role? Like, you can't ask for something to happen that's probably not going to happen. Like, should they probably take a step back and not be so buddy-buddy with players and stuff like that, and be more of a true owners of the team and let Will McClay take over the GM position and really pull the strings and stuff like that? Sure. But I don't really think it's realistic. Mike, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, that's never going to happen. And I mean, that's the problem with, if you're going to, with the culture of the Cowboys, that's where it's at. I mean, I've said it a million times, I'm in business. I think, all of us jobs, and, we always have a boss, and the boss has a boss. And if I can jump over my boss to get to the boss's boss with no problem, that just kind of makes it bad. It cuts the legs under my boss, and it just creates a culture that becomes a problem. And I just think that's always been the issue with the Cowboys. You got to remember back when Jerry, first bought the team, he was trying to get his money back. They, had a lot of debt. They weren't able to make, they were struggling to make payroll sometimes. So his focus was getting this team profitable, where Jimmy did everything for player personnel. He was the GM. He did everything. And then once the winning started and the money rolled in, Jerry wanted his kudos and wanted to be part of it. And I think that's obviously where the divide started for them. But that's the constant problem for the Cowboys. It's never going to change. That's why I always say the Cowboys got to win in spite. They got to win in spite of it. And I'm not saying anything bad about Jerry. I love him as an owner. I think he's funny. I think all that kind of stuff. But, you wish that, there's days that I look at the organizations of some of these other teams and I'm like, man, I'm jealous. I'm jealous of what you guys got. I mean, we got the glam and we got all the fun, but we're not getting that hardware to show for it lately. And all we got to do is think back to the team's past and think of all this kind of stuff. And I want my kid and Kelly's kid and your kid, when they can, everyone can all realize it, to know what it's like to have a Super Bowl championship. I remember it. And I am mad that I didn't appreciate it as much as I did, because felt like it was going to be a given. We're going to be there every year. And then when it ended so abruptly, and people forget the window was pretty short. It wasn't this 10-year run. It was about a 5-year really legit run they had, and then the wheels just started falling off with everything else. So I mean, that's my thing. Is it's not going to change. They got to win in spite of them, and I sure hope they do.
Yeah, Kelly, you have any comments on this?
I don't think that. I think that it's a family-run business, and I think that it's going to stay that way. I think for as long as I'm around, I don't think that's going to change. I know a lot of people that are like, well, when Jerry passes away, which I think that's kind of a morbid thought to think about, but people do think about it. They think when Jerry passes away, things will change organizationally. I don't think that. I think Steven's the same as Jerry, and I think it actually might be worse than Jerry. I think we may be wishing for Jerry when it's time for Steven to run this thing, because I mean, Steven's the one, and I'm granted it didn't come back to bite us. He didn't really do much with Denver, but I mean, Steven's the one that botched the whole Randy Gregory deal. We're sitting there and we have a contract, and it was the lettering of the contract, and that was a whole Stephen Jones thing. If that was Jerry, I mean, that deal would have got done and signed. I mean, they even said as much afterwards. And I think Jerry was kind of upset about the way that went down. So I mean, Stephen Jones seems like he's a little bit more of a little bit more cheaper. He's always talking about the money and, and this and that or whatever. And so I don't know, man. I don't know that we'll ever hire a GM. I think Mike tried. I think we got to win in spite of him, and, hopefully sooner than later, because, who knows what that'll look like if and when, Steven takes the reins full time and Jerry's gone.
Yeah. Thing you have to give Jerry, I'll just say he cares. He cares. Yeah. I mean, you see the emotion, you see everything after a lot. I mean, I'll give him that. He cares. I mean, he means well. He can't help himself.
Well, yeah. I think I got Jerry. Jerry's calling in right now. Hold on. I think hold on. Jerry, are you there?
Hey, hello there, EJ. How the hell are you?
Hey, man, I'm good. I'm so glad you could do this for us. Man, just talk about this team. What can we do to get over the hump? I know you want to see a Super Bowl just as much as us fans. Jerry, how do we do this, man?
Well, anytime you're talking about building a championship roster here, organizationally, there are certain things that you look for. First thing is the money. Right? It all starts with the money. And how can I make, not how I can make money, how this team can generate enough money to go around to get the right players in to contribute towards this team, right? And I've talked about the pie and that there's only so much pie. But I think fans are starting to smarten up now and understand that it's kind of a pie buffet. Right, this whole salary cap thing can be manipulated. It can be twisted. I mean, hell, you've seen me talk about and talk in circles now for about 28 years, and sometimes people call my bluff. So now I think it's really time to go all in, and just the buck stops here. Get down to brass tacks, and not to be trite, but pull this cake out the oven and get it ready to eat.
Mike, do you have a question for Jerry, man?
I just really want to know, Jerry, the talk of the running back. I mean, are we gonna be bringing in a veteran? I heard Henry, I've heard Jacobs, Barkley. I mean, I know you can't give it away, but what do you got cooking in that oven? Because we need some running back pie.
Well, let me tell you what we won't be cooking, and that's a Tony Pollard turnover. I think we've learned our lesson there, that we need to go with a guy that's proven, a guy that can come in and win now and produce. We learned the hard way that if you can't run the ball in this league, it's going to be a long season, and we saw that. And so not to take away from what Tony did for this team, but we need something with a little bit more pop. That's got to be whether that be a guy like Derrick Henry, who continues to perform at a high level, or a Saquon Barkley, who brings some athleticism to the table. But we definitely got to add some pop here to that running back position. I think that should probably be priority number one as we enter the free agency here.
Absolutely, Jerry. Man, I don't want to take up all of your time, Jerry. I know you're a busy man. But is there any inside news on the Dak thing? Is this deal going to get done over the offseason, or what can we expect?
We will be looking at all avenues here on what to do with Dak Prescott. And now I have spoken mighty highly of Dak and what he has done for this team. But I've also mentioned that we will only go as far as Dak Prescott takes us. And I have said that. I really mean it. He's the engine for this team. And just to be, quite frank, he's been a 4-cylinder, and what we need is a V8. And we're trying to up that horsepower and find a way to get him to where he can perform at that V8.
Jerry, we need to get him a turbo, man. Go get him a wide receiver in the first round. Put the turbo on the boy and let's roll.
Now, I've seen a few mock drafts. Obviously, I can't give nothing away, but, there's a young man, the wide receiver from Florida State, Mr. Coleman, that could be that turbo to this engine that we need. But either way, we want to put this team in a position to win. And right now, with Dak sitting there at that $60 million, that's like paying $6 a gallon for gas when you're about to take a 24-hour road trip. It's just not going to work to get us to where we need to go.
Absolutely, Jerry. Well, thanks for your time, man. We'll have to catch you on a different show. We'll bring it back over to here to my guys Mike Tag and Kelly K9. And I'll let you guys shout your socials or any parting thoughts. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, just again, you can catch Kelly and I in the Cowboys Cave. I will say I was going to wait to drop it, but, we're having a good time. I'm telling you, this is going to be an exciting one. We've got a member of the Great Wall going to be coming into the cave probably next week, if not next week, the week after. And we're talking about he was rated the dirtiest NFL football player 2 years in a row. He got thrown out of a Pro Bowl game for fighting. And I'm talking about Kevin Gogan, 2-time Super Bowl champion. So it's going to be a lot of fun to get him in the cave. And he's already warned me. He said he's got no filter. So he already gave me the warning. So I think it's going to be pretty hot. It's going to be good. So definitely check us out on our YouTube channel. And you can follow me on any social platform at mtag1993.
Gotta follow these guys for the player interviews, for all their great work. They also have the fantasy also, man.
Yep,
everything that they do.
Yeah, ring sized.
There we go. I'm waiting on it. I gotta put a plaque up here too. So I'm the reigning champ. Cowboys failed, but your guy EJ Savage had to carry the load. Kelly, go ahead and shout yourself out, man.
Yeah, it's just at Kelly K9 on everything, on all the socials, at Kelly_K_9. And yeah, we got I want to thank everybody for showing up in the chat, all the likes, subscribers, and for people, if you haven't liked and subscribed already to the Boys in the Zone, if you're not already, people that are on the Cowboys Cave right now, make sure you head over there and do that, as he continues to bring you guys some great content, Cowboys content, draft content. As you go get towards a little bit closer to the draft, you'll find out some great stuff here from EJ, and we'll continue to bring the player interviews like Mike said. If the Cowboys can't win the titles, we're going to bring the titles to you. In terms of the guys that know what it takes to win and know what it takes to be a part of a winning franchise, because, honestly, that's what this Cowboys team needs as a whole, man. I'm not against these coaches, man, bringing these guys in on a regular basis. I really feel that these guys from the 90s, the Irvins, the Emmitt Smiths, the Troys, that those guys need to be welcomed into the facility on a regular basis, man, whether it's just to invite them for mentorship or whether it be to just be there and have them tell stories about things that they went through and experiences and what it takes, because something is missing from the DNA of this Dallas Cowboys team, and nobody seems to be able to really put a finger on it. But what better way to inject some winning into this team than to bring winners? So let's just hope that this season ends up better, man, and that we're getting things headed hopefully in the right direction. Starts with Zimmer at the defensive coordinator, and then leading into free agency and the draft. So a lot of things to happen.
Absolutely. Can't thank these guys enough for showing up here and popping into the Cowboys conference call is what I'm calling it. Should have had some more people tonight, but they had their own stuff going on. So hopefully they can get better. Praying for those people. And then if you're interested in me, I'm going to be getting on another podcast tomorrow, Touchdowns and Tacos, I believe it's what it's called. And I think we're rolling at 7. I'd have to double check that, but I'll put a tweet out for you guys. If you haven't already, like the video, subscribe to my YouTube channel, Boys in the Zone. I'm EJ Savage. Go follow my Twitter as well, and we'll catch you on the next one. Peace.
Yeah. Forget what you got, none of it matters until you don't wear from the top. I'm talking non-stop squad. They've been down with me for years, and none of them asking for squad. Fight out of the gutter, don't stutter. I'm taking my shots. Pop, block.